Eric Osterhaus is here with us, and we're going to talk about the markets from this past week. And first of all, I guess probably we need to address this grain market here first. We've got a big report coming up on Monday. I call it big. It's a quarterly grain stocks report. And if I understand right, this does not include global. This is just United States stocks, correct?
Yes, that is correct. It'll just include what's here in the U.S.
Okay, so we should find out what the wheat production number was in all of this. Do you think that much of this past week's trade just dealt with, and the reason I ask this is because there wasn't much movement. It was kind of a dull week in the grain market. So do you think there was just a lot of pre-report positioning, position squaring, into the month squaring, things like that taking place?
Yeah, it really seems like that's what was going on. I mean, you look at the wheat market, you mentioned that. I mean, of course, we are going to eagerly await what Monday's report brings, but that wheat market, we had a nice move back higher off the lows a couple weeks ago, but since then, you can just see the market refuses to go either direction. We've been chopping solidly sideways. That December contract, we just keep bouncing against our resistance and holding on to that support, and neither side wants to get out too far ahead of his skis just a little bit. And so I think come Monday we'll see it finally decide what direction it wants to go, depending on the news that we see. A lot of debate out there as to what that is going to say, of course, and even if we get the news we want, as we've seen before, you never know how the market's going to trade. There are a lot of headlines going on out there right now outside of just supply and demand fundamentals.
Oh yeah, one of those big headlines was we struck a trade deal with Japan. I understand, it doesn't do much for corn and soybeans, but for wheat, this may be a pretty good shot in the arm.
Yeah, and I think that is, if we get something even just neutral really on wheat, the fact is we're a long ways away now till our next wheat harvest at this point, and there is of course some discussion out there that wheat needs to make sure that it gets drilled and it encourages the farmers to plant. So again, the hope is that we see something on that report that is if nothing else, simply neutral, and I would think that would be supportive on the wheat. Corn and wheat tend to like to follow each other here a little bit, and the corn has been kind of in that pause mode as well here this last week and a half. But this might be something that you would actually see the wheat kind of separate itself from the corn, at least for a short run.
Yeah, but Australia is still having problems. I saw a report back on Thursday morning where their meteorologists, their weather gurus were saying that they've been in a drought now for, what is this, going on 3 years now, and they say that there's only a 25% chance that they'll get any measurable significant rains over the next 3 months. And that could take a lot of that wheat crop and really put it behind if that's the case. So there are still problems with our competitors in the wheat globe on a global scale.
There really is, and you mentioned the long-suffering Australians, and they really have been. That's been a really terrible 3 years, and I have noticed the latest updates on their weather, and it looks fairly bleak. So I feel sorry for those folks across the pond there. And there is, we're seeing some demand out there for our wheat, I should say. We haven't won a whole lot of those tenders as of yet, but this is yet another headline. You add 2 or 3 things together, and it might just give wheat enough support that it can draft higher. We just need, again, a little match, just a little match, I think, and you might see that wheat make a little bounce higher.
We talked about the Japanese trade agreement with the United States. You have to lump the cattle market in on that as well. We're starting to get to those levels in this live cattle complex over here on the fats. If you look at a chart, we're getting up here into some levels where if we would break through, if we could hold that, we'd probably see this cattle market get back to a point where it was pre-Holcomb fire. And, now with this Japan deal, Japan likes the United States beef, and they could end up buying a lot more beef.
Yeah, this is good news for the beef industry. We don't want to get too excited just yet, but I think you can also look at on the chart what has been happening there. Obviously, some people have believed that this deal with Japan was going to get done, and I think that's why there's two pretty big gaps that were on the chart from a technical standpoint. We filled one, and it looks like we're starting to creep into the next. So yes, that would get us back up. Pre-fire, let's call it. And then, again, you look at some of the other headlines that are out there, maybe we could see that next move higher here in the live cattle, especially if we could see that cash trade firm up here that we just haven't really seen in the last couple weeks.
Well, the cutouts have certainly come off of some of their highs there when that fire happened. So it just seems like maybe, well, and you look at the feeder cattle market, it has really recovered pretty well also.
Yes, it has, and I think it's helped a little bit too. Some of that spread trading between it and the corn. Corn has kind of calmed down. We're getting closer to harvest, and I think that's a little of the result that you're seeing there too.
Okay, well, it all bears watching. We're going to be keeping our eyes open on what could come out on Monday with that grain stocks report. You got to know that. You got to know that cattle feeders are going to be watching that also pretty closely. All right, what is the best way to get a hold of you folks there at Paragon Ag Advisors?
Look us up on our website, www.myagadvisor.com.
All right, thank you very much, Eric. Eric Osterhaus here with us here for this portion of the program. But we've got a lot more coming up here in just a moment, so be sure and stay tuned. We'll take a break, and we'll be coming back right after you hear this.